So, hi. What we're going to do in this lesson is we're going to look at my rewrite of lesson 1 of Adler, including an enormous amount of oral exercise. The Adler course has its origins in a language course written by Henri Ollendorff, and Henri Ollendorff in turn adapted the method from a teaching method developed by Louis Manesca. Now, Manesca developed in the late 1700s, early 1800s, a method for teaching French orally, and he was extremely successful. He wrote a book, which was rather an expensive book, some 500 pages of very small print, outlining his method. And he taught a certain Mr. Brisbane, and this Mr. Brisbane was taught French by Manesca and also Latin, although we don't have any record of Manesca's Latin course with Mr. Brisbane. Mr. Brisbane then travelled off to the continent. He was in America. He travelled off to Europe, and he engaged a teacher to teach him German, Monsieur Henri Ollendorff, and he described Manesca's method to him, and Ollendorff then proceeded to teach him using this method, decided it was a wonderful method, and published a textbook. This became very popular, and Ollendorff then issued a whole series of textbooks, French, German, German, French, French, Italian, Italian, German, any combination you can imagine. It became such a popular method that there are even examples of Far Eastern languages that are using the Ollendorff method. There was one for Yiddish, there was one for Hebrew, not necessarily all written by Mr. Ollendorff himself, but all franchised out from him. However, the Ollendorff method is inferior to the original Manesca method. So what I've done here is I have rewritten the first chapter of Ollendorff, adapted to the original teaching method of Jean Manesca and his son Louis Manesca, who continued on with publishing his textbooks. So here we go. I'm going to run through it. There's going to be some revision, but in this lesson you are going to be expected to participate quite extensively. And what I'm going to do is, when you need to answer a question, I'm going to do that. I'm going to hit my wine glass with my knife in the absence of a bell. So, first course, lesson 1. What would happen normally is the teacher would dictate or write on the board, the pupil would write down the following things. So I'm just going to give it to you. You have, and that's habes, habes. Note the enclitic ne, joined or glued on, acts like a question mark, and the enclitic stuck onto a word shows us we have a question. Do you have? Habesne, habesne. I have. Habeo. Est? It is. Mihi? To me. Est mihi? It is to me. I have. Estne mihi? Do I have? Is it to me? Estne mihi? Tibi? To you. Estne tibi? Do you have, or is it to you? Est is a verb that's a joining verb. It's the copula, so-called, and it takes the nominative case of a noun. The nominative case is the case of the noun when it is the subject or the theme of a sentence. Habeo and habes, I have, you have, is transitive. This verb takes an object, something that is had, and the object of the verb is in the accusative case. Now, there's no marker for the accusative case in English, so in my written text what I'm using is the little forward arrow sign, the less than sign in front of it, and this will mark the accusative case in the written text. What I propose to do is put this lesson up as a Google document, and then attach a link to it underneath this lesson so you can have a look at how I've laid out the lesson in writing. Pileus, a brimless hat. Pilium, the accusative, a brimless hat. Do you have the hat being in the accusative? Habesne pilium. I have got the hat in the accusative. Pilium habeo. Do you have the hat? Without any accusatives. Estne tibi pilius. Is it to you a hat, literally? Estne tibi pilius. I have the hat. Est mihi pilius. It is to me a hat. Now the oral exercise, if this was being conducted in a class, then it would be a scripted conversation between the teacher and the pupils. The idea would be the pupils would sit in a semicircle and the teacher would start to ask questions of the pupils one at a time. If the pupil can't respond immediately, that pupil is passed over to the next pupil until we have a pupil who can respond correctly, and then keep going around and around until all the responses are correct. So the student is hearing the teacher and also hearing the other students as well. And this builds up an immense amount of repetition. It's a common error that we make when we're learning, that we think because we can understand something, we're going to remember it. And we underestimate, and there's a lot of scientific research being done into this in education, and we underestimate how long it's going to take us to learn something. And the easier it appears, the more we underestimate it. For example, if you give two groups of students a vocabulary test and one group of student has the words in a larger font than the other students, the ones in the larger font, because it's easier to process the information, think it's easier to learn it. And in fact, they do worse when they're tested on the material. Because our emotional response to what we're learning, if it appears easy, influences our prediction of how well we're going to learn it. There's no way around it. If you want to learn something, you have to do an enormous amount of revision and repetition, even if it appears easy. And this method does make it appear easy-ish. Don't be seduced by that. You still need to work quite hard. So, exercitatio prima, the first exercise. And remember, repetitio mater studiorum. Repetition is the mother of learning. The Romans would have known all about that, having to teach people their language all across the Roman Empire. So here we go. I'm going to ask you a question. You have to answer it. And what I will do is, after I've asked it, I'm going to do that. So, habesne pilium. And your answer should have been pilium habeo. So, habesne pilium, do you have a hat? Pilium habeo, I have a hat. Estne tibi pilius? Est mihi pilius. It is to me a hat. I have a hat. Should have been your answer. So, estne tibi pilius? Est mihi pilius. A new word. The pen, and in the accusative, the pen. So that's penna and pennam. Of the pen, or the pens, pennai. Exercise 2. Answer these questions. Habesne pennam? Pennam habeo. Estne tibi penna? Est mihi penna. Habesne pilium? Pilium habeo. Estne tibi pilius? Est mihi pilius. A new word. a ribbon, and then the accusative a ribbon. That's tainia, it's feminine, tainia, and the accusative tainiam. Of the ribbon or of a ribbon, tainiai, tainiai. So in this lesson, after this point, the case of possession, that's pennai, tainiai, in the examples that we've seen, will be given whenever a new word is given. The ending of this case is unique to each of the 5 categories of word, those are the declensions. So we can use the ending to identify which declension a word belongs to. This is important as many words share endings in common in the nominative. That's the case of the thing itself when it is functioning as the subject of the sentence. We always give the nominative first when giving out vocabulary. And at this point in the lesson, I'm also giving you the accusative. Oral exercise 3. Answer these questions. Habesne pennam? Pennam habeo. Estne tibi penna? Est mihi penna? Sorry about that. Habesne pilium? Pilium habeo. Estne tibi pilius? Est mihi pilius. Habesne tainiam? Tainiam habeo. Estne tibi tainia? Est mihi tainia. We're now going to introduce a new word, the table, the accusative the table, and the genitive of the table. That's mensa, in the accusative mensam, and the genitive mensai of the table. Oral exercise 4. Answer these questions. Habesne pennam? Pennam habeo. Estne tibi penna? Est mihi penna. Habesne pilium? Pilium habeo. Estne tibi pilius? Est mihi pilius. Habesne tainiam? Tainiam habeo. Estne tibi tainia? Est mihi tainia. Habesne mensam? Mensam habeo. Estne tibi mensa? Est mihi mensa. We're going to introduce a new word now, sugar, and the accusative sugar, and the genitive of sugar. So that's sakarum in nominative, sakarum in the accusative, sakari in the genitive. So sakarum, sakarum, and sakari. Oral exercise 5. Answer these questions. Habesne pennam? Pennam habeo. Estne tibi penna? Est mihi penna. Habesne pilium. Pilium habio. Estne tibi pilius. Est mihi pilius. Habesne tainiam. Tainiam habio. Estne tibi tainia. Est mihi tainia. Habesne mensam. Mensam habio. Saccharum, sugar. Habesne saccharum. Saccharum habio. Estne tibi saccharum. Est mihi saccharum. Right, some new vocabulary. My, then my in the accusative, and then my in the genitive. For masculine, it goes meus, and then the accusative meum, and then the genitive of my, mei. For the feminine, it's mea, meam, meai. And for the neuter, it's meum, meum in the accusative, and then mei. So these words, meus, mea, and meum, are nouns adjective. They are used to describe or modify another noun, and they need to match it in form. So we match kaharta with mea. We do not match kaharta with meam or with meus. That would be a mismatch. This matching up is called agreement. Your, and then your in the accusative, and then of your, that's tuus, tuum in the accusative, tui, that's masculine. Tua, tuam, tuai, feminine, and tuum, tuum, tui, neuter. Your, and of your. Tuus, tuum, and tui are all different forms of the same word, your. We call these different forms cases. Almost all Latin nouns substantive, that is things that we can identify, it's a noun substantive, and nouns adjective, those are nouns that modify other nouns, have cases. Some examples. My pen, and my pen in the accusative. So penna mea in the accusative, pennam, and then it has to agree, meam. My hat in the nominative, pilius meus, it's agreeing, and in the accusative also agreeing, pilium meum. My sugar, which is neuter, saccharum meum, and in the accusative, saccharum meum. A new word, sal, salt or of the salt, that is sal, the accusative sal, and the genitive of salt, salis. Notice there's got a long A, sal, but salis, it's a short A. When the nominative and the accusative are the same, we then say that the noun substantive is of the neuter gender. And we've seen two examples like this already. We have sal, nominative, and sal in the accusative. And we have saccharum, nominative, and saccharum in the accusative. So when we have these two the same, nominative and accusative, the noun is of the neuter gender. Oral exercise 6. Answer the following questions in Latin. Habesne pennam meam Pennam tuam habeo. So habesne pennam meam. Do you have my pen? Pennam tuam habeo. I have your pen. Estne tibi penna mea. Est mihi penna tua. Habesne pilium meum. Pilium tuum habeo. Estne tibi pilius meus. Est mihi pilius tuus. Tiny as a ribbon. Habesne tiniam meam. Tiniam tuam habeo. Estne tibi tinia mea. Est mihi tinia tua. Mensa is a table. Habesne mensam meam. Mensam tuam habeo. Estne tibi mensa mea. Est mihi mensa tua. Saccharum is sugar. Habesne saccharum meum. Saccharum tuum habeo. Estne tibi saccharum meum. Est mihi saccharum tuum. Habesne sal meum. Sal tuum habeo. Estne tibi sal meum. Est mihi sal tuum. A new word. Paper, the accusative paper, and the genitive of paper. Kaharta, the accusative kahartan, and the genitive of paper kahartai. Oral exercise 7. Penna, a pen. Habesne pennam tuam. Pennam meam habeo. Estne tibi penna tua? Est mihi penna mea. Habesne pilium tuum? Pilium meum habeo. Estne tibi pilius tuus? Est mihi pilius meus. Habesne taniam meam? Tiniam tuam Habio. Estne tibi. Tainia tua. Est mihi tainia mea. Habesne mensam meam. Mensam tuam habio. Estne tibi mensa tua. Est mihi mensa mea. Sacrum sugar. Habesne sacrum tuum. Sacrum meum habio. Estne tibi sacrum tuum. Est mihi sacrum meum. Habesne cahartam tuam. Cahartam meam habio. Estne tibi caharta tua. Est mihi caharta mea. A new phrase. Yes, master, or yes, sir. Ita est domine. Ita est domine. Yes, ma'am, or yes, mistress. Ita est domina. Ita est domina. Yes, sir, I've got, or I have. Ita est domine habio. And yes, ma'am, I've got. Ita est domina habio. So ita est domine habio. Ita est domina habio. Oral lesson 8. In this final oral round, the student will answer in full, replying yes, sir, or yes, madam, I, whatever, etc. So the student will become used to forming longer sentences. You need to reply in full and not merely say yes. Penna is a pen. Habesne pennam meam. Ita est domine pennam tuam habio. Estne tibi penna mea. Ita est domine est mihi penna tua. Habesne pilium meum. Ita est domina pilium tuum habeo. Estne tibi pilius meus. Ita est domine est mihi pilius tuus. Habesne tainiam meam. Ita est domine tainiam tuam habio. Estne tibi tainia mea. Ita est domine est mihi tainia tua. Habesne mensam meam. Ita est domine mensam tuam habio. Estne tibi mensa mea. Ita est domine est mihi mensa tua. Habesne sacrum meum. Ita est domina, est mihi saccharum tuum. Habesne sal meum. Ita est domine, sal tuum habeo. Estne tibi, sal meum. Ita est domine, est mihi sal tuum. And that brings us to the end of the first lesson of the first course. Vale.